Hello YouTube, Chance Paladin here. I wanted to, just really quick before this video starts, I want to give a huge thank you to everybody. Reached 400 subs, and blew right past 400 subs, which is awesome. Seriously, thank you, 400 subs right here, boom. I'm gonna add channel art, but that's coming later. But let's just jump right into it. So I was thinking, talking to my friends, what do I do for 400 subs? Thought about a bunch of things. Decided finally after several days, I couldn't figure it out. Last night I was like, let's do top interview questions, and everybody's busy, so I just got all over it myself, and so I had some interviews last week, and hopefully we'll see something good. I don't know, who knows, but maybe this will help you guys. I don't know. Um, we're just gonna jump right into it though, and we'll be going over the top interview questions. I got about 30 slides, so we're gonna be going through this a little quick, but I'm gonna be hitting the high points. Um, and again, happy 400 subs. Thank you everyone. 400 subs is a huge deal to me. Just really quick, because 400 is almost 500. 500 is almost, it's halfway to 1,000. 1,000 subs is a pretty damn strong number. Somewhere between 1,000 and 3,000 subs, and you are quite a deal on your way. So into getting actual regular viewership. So again, love you guys. Uh, even if you don't like regularly watch my video game stuff, or if you just watch my training stuff, it doesn't matter. Love all of you. Thank you so much. So I've done a lot of interviews, and if you search online, whether you're just getting out of college, or whether you are trying to find a new job, or whether you're like me and you've been unemployed for way too long, you go to all these websites. Doesn't matter if it's LinkedIn or Monster or whatever. All the interview questions are relatively the same, and so you might be thinking, oh, whatever, that doesn't help. Actually, it does help a lot, because people doing interviews for the last several years don't really want to do interviews. So they are all relatively inexperienced. They don't want to be doing it either. They get, I guarantee you, 95% of them get their interview questions from here, which means uh, in the case of your interview, you're probably only going to get about 7 questions. 6 of those 7 questions, and there will probably be a wild card. 6 of those 7 questions will be from here. So let's get going. Even though these are no particular, or probably the first thing they always ask, in my opinion, because they're poor interviewers, but it's kind of the generally accepted icebreaker, um, is the all the all inclusive. Tell us a little bit about you, and it's important that you know how to just swiftly and deftly answer this one and get this one out of the way, so it doesn't turn into a stumbling block. Really, what they're just asking is, they don't really care about you. They don't really want to know about you at all. They're just asking you to, in reverse order, explain your job history and kind of professionally how you got to be sitting in front of them. So, whatever professionally got you there. And if you can bake in your education, definitely bake in your education. But a lot of the time, I don't even do that. It's just as organically as you can, how fast you can get in there, and get to that, get to how you're sitting there, and if you can get a little bit of why you're passionate about the job, go for that too, or why you're passionate about what you do. The reason why I say that, the reason why I say that a lot of people, that this is a telltale sign that the interviewer doesn't know what they're doing, is that this question is largely irrelevant. They should already know all of this from your resume, and it's just a lazy lazy icebreaker. So yeah, that's the faster you can memorize and practice like a really quick backstory, just memorizing your resume backwards as to and then dovetail it quickly and sort of discreetly into the job that you're applying for. The quicker and faster you can do that, the quicker and faster you can get this job out of the way. How did you hear about the position? Uh, Try to keep in the back of your mind. This is where really, really good notes come in. Try to think about how you heard about it. This is usually, if you're on your game, this is like a 2-second question. I just tell them whether it's true or not. I usually just tell them I heard about it on Indeed, unless I actually know the place and submit it on their job board, like their actual physical website. Because it's not worth all the arguing and explanation and haggling. So, keep really good notes. Good notes, so this is an easy question to answer. You want to get this question out of the way as fast as possible. It's an absolutely stupid question, but they need to know for their records. So, the faster you get this question out of the way, the better. I use Indeed for everything. Some people use Dice. Some people use Monster. I stopped using Dice a long time ago, but some people still use it. Some people still use Monster. Just keep that. Just keep that in mind. I use LinkedIn still sometimes. LinkedIn's actually stepping up their game, so just keep that in mind. What do you know about the company? Why do you want the job? Why do you want to work for us? This comes down again to doing your homework. If you're going through an agency, have the agency do your homework for you. Have the agency do your homework or help you with your homework. If it's a contract, I usually tell them, if it's a really good company, if it's like a medium-sized company, I usually tell them I enjoy working for real companies that make products that are socially responsible. I also tell them something along the lines of it's going to be specific, and so I say something along those lines. I say something product related. So product related, and then job title specific related. So for me, like a business system analyst, I would say I see you guys doing ramping up some new projects, and so I like to be a part of new big projects being ramped up. So if you're a developer, then you'd say, "Well, I like to be developing," or if you're a manager, you say, "I like to manage." And so you guys need managers, and you're ramping up, and I like the product you guys make, and I'd like to manage for you guys. It should knock all those questions out of the park. It's honestly a stupid question. Yeah, and as long as you're on your A game with your coffee and your breakfast, you should be able to knock that out of the park. So let's see here. I'm looking for these aren't in any specific order, because I've noticed, just kind of off topic really quick, I've noticed that they don't follow a specific order because they don't necessarily know what they're doing. There's an order that these should go in, but they're not. They're not in order. I kind of apologize for that. I kind of also am unapologetic for that, because they don't follow an order either. So you should get used to these being out of a logical order. It irritates me, being like a system process guy, but don't ever, like, for example, why do you want this job? I don't answer why do you want the job. I answer why. I answer, like, what interests me about the position. That's what I'm really answering. What interests me about the position and business product specifically. That's what I'm actually answering. And then the agency, like if the website or whatnot. Some companies, the website might be hard to find. So, moving on. This is the ever stupid why should we hire you question. This is where most people start blubbering about, well, I have good work ethic and this and that, and I'm a hard worker and I'm easy to get along with, and it's a lot of people running their mouth. In reality, if they're interviewing you, they already have a fairly good idea that you're at least, excuse me, I'm hiccuping. They already have a fairly good idea that they would probably want to hire you. So, why don't you say, well, what I actually try to answer here, since I don't like this question, is fit into the team. Because what I noticed in all these questions, and I didn't see it asked anywhere in all the websites that I checked, is this is what they're really trying to answer throughout the whole entire interview, is they really want to know if you're going to gel with the team. So if they're stupid and inexperienced enough to ask why they should hire me, which is an idiotic question, that's where I try to fit in how I would fit into the team. And if they start to bark back to me that that's not the question that they asked, that's when I start to realize that really the interview's not going to go anywhere, and that they're either too experienced or too angry, or they've already made up their mind, which has happened before. And then that's when you unfortunately are going to have to start writing off the interview. But if you answer how you believe you would gel in with the team, and not that you would get along with people, but how you would get along with people, if they like that answer and kind of quote unquote allow you to continue on to the next question without too much accosting and too much harassment. Like, if they start harassing you at this question, then you know that you're not going to fit into the team, if that makes sense. It's ridiculous. So, I don't want to dive too much into it, but there's a lot of psychology behind this question. Usually either because of people's inability to interview, people's inability to manage, or because they've already got a loaded team of some certain kind of individuals that is some massive HR violation for some reason or another, and they're trying to weed everybody out that doesn't fit their magic mold. So, this is like, why don't you fit into our ethnic group? Why don't you fit into our gender group? Right? Or how do you know you're not going to upset the balance of the clique that we already have in here? So, how would you not rock the boat? Are you a drama queen? They're looking king. They're looking to make sure that you're not going to come in and seriously screw things up, or like be one of those bastards that steals things from the refrigerator. Alright, so moving on. Why is there a gap in your employment? I don't want to say that. I don't know. I had this. This is not a real problem. This is a perceived problem. People have turned this into a problem where it is not a problem, because so many people are lying about the economy right now that they believe that somebody with like my background or your background should have a job, except they won't hire you because they say there's a gap in your employment. Oh, you should have a job. It's like, well, hire me. And they're like, I'm not going to hire you. There's a gap in your employment. It's like, well, how do you expect me to get a job then? So, what you've got to do is start filling the gaps in your employment with private projects, which is what I did. And if they challenge you on private projects, then they've got a problem, and that's exactly what I did. And once I started filling the gaps with private projects, they skip right over it and go, "Oh, well, when can you start then?" And it's not a problem anymore. They believe if there's no employment there, they believe you are literally doing nothing. Sitting there staring at a wall. It's ridiculous. So, yeah. So, you have to fill those perceived gaps in your resume. Otherwise, there's a whole host of problems, especially if it's your most recent gap. If it's a gap that's further on out and you've worked since then, it honestly shouldn't be a problem. You know, and in fact, it could even be really what they're looking for here. Is, were you in prison? I think that's honestly what they're. I think that's honestly what they were looking for. And it's like when I said staring at a wall. I think that's what they were looking for. And that is, it's as I can't think of a word, but it's horrible. Because they're gonna find out anyway. They get to run a background check on you anyway. But it's horrible. It makes me so mad. We're just gonna move on though. Otherwise, I'm gonna stay on this one for an hour. It just makes me so mad. But I'm past it. You can be past it too. Just leave me a question down in the comments if you're stuck on this one, and I'll help you write your resume. I'll help you fill in the gaps in your resume if you want. What are your greatest strengths / greatest weaknesses? They get off on this. They have almost a sick pleasure in this, and people have spent way too much time pre-practicing this one to say, oh well, I get there early and leave late, and they're like, oh, so you have poor time management. And decent interviewers have found really good ways at screwing with people. It's better to just be honest and say, like my strengths are finding issues with processes that add values and working with people. My weaknesses are probably I have issues sometimes where I try to communicate a couple steps ahead, and people have to remind me, that everybody's a couple steps back still. And what you always do is you always say what your contingency is, and so I always go, what I remind people is sometimes I get a couple steps ahead, so just remind me when I do that, and they just remind me, and everything's fine. And if they ever try to say to you, oh, that's not a weakness, they're trying to start a fight with you. And I've had more than one manager try to do this. And at this point, you're not getting the job. And I don't know why I don't know why managers have gotten the entitlement to believe that it's okay for them to do this. But I have since tweaked my responses. That was back when I was not done with college yet. So the response that I give now is more or less the response I give, and I've received positive feedback from that. Um, what you've got to do for this question is you've got to dig deep on what your strengths and weaknesses actually are, because they'll ask you this question. They'll ask these questions like a million different ways. What would your coworkers say your strengths were? What would your managers say your strengths were? They'll ask you this like a million different ways and screw with your brain. And so you've really got to dig deep, and not like your machismo answer. You've got to dig deep on what are you really legitimately good at, and what are you actually weak at. And they're not trying to wash you out. They're just trying to fit you. That's all. That's all. And so you don't have to get defensive. But if they turn out one of these, oh, that's not a weakness, I usually stop the interview and go, hold on, hold on. And then I've had this after that. I'm the one who asks the questions. And I'm like, oh really? Like, you're the big man. You're the owner. You're the owner of the company, and you're the big man. And because he didn't like my answer to the question, I think I said he had put a tweak on it, and he had said what do you do that like makes other people feel uncomfortable? And that's when I was a little bit unhealthier, and I said, well, I work longer hours than everybody else, and people don't like it, and it makes people uncomfortable, and I get more done, and I did. I mean, I worked as hard as I do now, except I was working longer hours. And he just fucking I dropped the F-bomb, son of a bitch. There you go. Hey, sorry. He exploded on me. And yeah. So I've sent, and needless to say, he cold shouldered me, didn't call me back. And he after the interview, he introduced me to everybody. And this was for just a little rinky-dink like admin position. So I would have had to work long hours anyway, because I would have been supporting everybody at the office from open to close. And so in hindsight, it would have been... I would have thought that in hindsight, not even realizing at the time, he would have actually really liked those. He would have said, well, actually, everybody here would like it if you actually are going to be working like 9 or 10 hour days. Because you can cover people in the morning, you can cover people at night, and maybe work like 4-day shifts or something. And maybe work like a short day on Fridays. But he just exploded. And so, yeah, it's important that especially as you grow older and mature, that you dig deep on what your strengths and weaknesses are. So we gotta move on, because we still got a ways to go. What's your biggest professional achievement, accomplishment? What's your biggest failure? This is gonna change probably, unless you're already quite experienced. I have a big software deployment that I did where I had to sunset an Access database that was failing. It's the biggest thing I've ever done so far. because it affected a lot of people over a lot of in it affected a lot of people in a lot of countries and stuff, and it affected a really important certification, ISO 9001. If you've watched my other training videos, that was probably my biggest professional achievement because it was a pretty expensive project, and I was qualified to do it, and it worked out just really good, and it worked out really well, and but the problem is they flip that and they go, "What's your biggest failure?" And it's like, I don't know. Biggest failure? And they'll ask that. And in fact, I got a similar question to that the other day. And so I think it's okay to not have a big failure. And so what I did is I trimmed it way back and told them, like, probably what a lesson learned, what my biggest lesson learned, instead of biggest failure, biggest lesson learned. And I think he took that really well. And especially if you're going to be a project manager, that lesson learned, like buzzword, is perfect. And I told him exactly what I did, exactly why I knew it didn't work, and exactly what I can do to fix it, which is just framing expectations. And I kicked myself, and I was able to fix it just relatively fast in a couple days, and it caused a minor kerbuckle and a couple people ruffled feathers. But once they realized that it was just really a miscommunication and in framing expectations of where the software was at in development, everybody was fine, and everything ended up being fine after just a couple days. It blew over, and it ruffled feathers for a little while. But the actual issue was over in a matter of days. Just, it wasn't a huge it doesn't have to be a huge failure. It's just your kind of your big lesson learned moment. If you say you haven't had any, it means either you've never done anything or you're full of crap. So this is a big, personal investment moment, and just looking at yourself. So, are you a leader or a follower? I've actually never had this question in an interview. A formal interview. I had a manager ask me this, and she didn't tell me it was an interview. Turned out later it was part of a series of kind of minor, a question here, a question there interviews over the course of I don't know how much time. The problem with me, of course, is I'm not a leader or a follower. I'm a lead or get the freaking heck out of the way kind of a person, right? And she didn't like that answer. She wanted a one or the other, and I am not a one or the other. I'm a fill in the blank. And she didn't like that. And I didn't get that job. Which bums me out because I would have loved that job and I loved the team. And so this is something I can't answer this for you. You have to decide if you're a leader or a follower. There's nothing wrong with either one. They're just trying to find out where you fit. So, it's just, introversion, looking into yourself and trying to figure out just things you need to think about. So, moving on, tell me about a challenge, situation, or conflict you face at work and how you dealt with it. Um, if you've worked anywhere for any amount of time with more than 10 people, uh, purely statistically, you've probably worked with some complete and total psychopath, rage monster. Maybe not a psychopath, but maybe a rage monster. If you've worked with more than 10 customers, you've probably spoken with a complete and total rage monster. So they just want to know how you've worked with them. Do your best to not use names. Any other identifier. Because one of the things some companies look for is when you're out interviewing someday, are you going to tell everybody their dirty laundry? So definitely be careful with that. But what they're looking for is conflict resolution. And if you're just going to come running to them or HR. Some people like that. Some companies like that. Some companies don't. Some companies, HRs are completely useless. And some people want you to follow HR to the letter. They're still useless, but they want you to follow HR to the letter. So, yeah. I don't really know much more I can say about that, except I always say that I think conflict is good, but not conflict for the sake of conflict. I think conflict for the sake of resolution is good, because I think if you aren't having some form of conflict over ideas, you're not actually being challenged. And you're not actually challenging anybody. You shouldn't be challenging people over everything. Otherwise, you're never going to get anything done. But there has to be a healthy balance. So, they're always happy with that answer. But that answer is going to be different for everybody. Because some people go, conflict, and run away. The thing is, I'm really good with conflict in person. But conflict that you can't actually address, like over the internet, over phone, over email, over text, things that you can't actually go and fix and address, I have more of an issue with that. People hiding behind anonymity or hiding behind distance. It's like, yeah, you think you're clever because you can drop your stupidity and then not answer, you know. And then you can go live your life while making everyone else's life toxic. To me, that's not conflict or challenge. That's just being a toxic asshole. So, actual work conflict, a small portion of it is healthy, whether it's male or female. It's healthy. It actually builds character. So, try to think about that before you go into the interview, before you answer this question. So, yeah. So, let's see. How would you deal with an angry or irate customer? How would you deal with an angry or irate employee? How would you deal with conflict in general? This kind of builds on the last question, but it's a little different because angry and conflict are two different things, especially if you're working in a call center or whatever. It depends if you de-escalate or if you're one of those people that just likes to fight. And so, I guess it depends. They might ask you this one instead of the other one, or the other one instead of this one. So, I've never seen anybody ask both unless it's like a 2-hour interview. So I guess how you deal with conflict in general would be actually part of the last one. My bad. Not that anybody cares about this PowerPoint, but I care. So I keep it cleaned up as I go. So how would you deal with... If you've ever worked in call centers, you'd already be able to answer this. And maybe that's why they would ask you. If an employee, if a coworker is actually already angry or irate, it could already be past the point of de-escalation, and it's kind of past the point of going to HR. That's kind of one of those things where it's like, well, do I go get security? Is he threatening people? You see what I mean? And if you have an angry or irate customer that's threatening harm upon the building or people, do you go, you go directly to a manager, or do you pull out your notepad of, are they threatening the company, and do you start making notes? Do you see what I mean? So these are two completely different things, and so dealing with pressure, especially if you're going to be working for the government or certain companies that receive more threats, more threats than normal. Speaking from working in companies that have received threats, anonymous threats, it's not fun. So your employees need to be able to deal with that, because we're living in different times now. So yeah. Badoop. How do you deal with ambiguous or vague instructions and direction? I actually was getting this question so much that I ended up just putting this right in my resume. And the funny thing is I deal with ambiguous and vague instructions and directions so often in my actual jobs. That's why I put it in my resume. And funny enough, when it gets brought up in interviews, they're like, "Oh, I see you put this in your resume," and I'm like, "Yeah, well, in fact, it came up in the interview last week. They go, well, when you deal with customers, what happens if they give you, ambiguous or vague instructions or directions?" I'm like, well, that's normal, and that's what I do. So I just work with them directly and sit with them and do whatever I need to do. That's normal. That way, when I talk to the developers or, engineers or whatever, I just answer all the questions. It's totally normal. Like, I don't understand. I guess the only thing, I think this is a test to see if you've ever done it before. Because if you haven't done it before, they'd be like, "Oh, I don't know." Ask them to repeat themselves. Like, fail. So, yeah. They're just looking for what your process is when people don't make sense, which is going to be all the time. Sorry, but people don't make sense all the time. Management doesn't know what they're doing half the time, so their instructions aren't going to make sense. The customers aren't going to make sense because they're in customer world. The developers in IT are in IT world. Finance is in finance world. All of their stuff is going to be ambiguous and vague to you unless you've specifically worked in their department before. It's your job to make it all make sense. So you go sit with them, make it all make sense so you can translate it all to everybody. It's just normal. So where do you see yourself in 5 years? This is kind of one of those trick questions. They want to see, oh, I'm going to have tons of kids and retire. And then they're like, you're not hired. Or I'm going to go join a religious cult. I don't know. They're trying to trick you here, but they're also looking for, if it's not a trick, they're looking for management potential. They are making upward mobility. They're usually looking to see if people are considering upward mobility. Usually not in developers, because developers are going to be developers forever, usually. Or they're going to be like development managers, maybe, where they just are going to be managing multiple applications from a higher level, so on and so forth. But, yeah, they're usually just looking to make sure you're not going to leave. Well, I plan on retiring in 5 years. And they go, oh, okay. And for some companies, that might be okay. because they might only be looking for like a 1 year, 2 year contract. But if they're looking for someone to be the CEO for 1 or 2 years, they're not going to care. So before you answer this question, actually think about what you actually want to be doing in 5 years, and think about where this job is probably going to be in 5 years. Think about where the company is going to be in 5 years, because those things matter depending on what level of manager you're interviewing with. So moving on, what's your dream job? This question is a trick. It's a trick. They're usually just asking you to repeat your what the job is, basically. I don't understand. I usually tell. I don't know how this stupid ass question came up to begin with. I usually tell them it's a job that I like helping people with. It's a job where I get to help people. It's a job where people get to go home happy because I helped them, because their job is easier, because their job's better, because they get to do a better job, because they're more satisfied. That's my dream job. I answer it as vague as possible, unless they are going to specify, because I think it's an intentionally vague question, and so I answer it equally vague unless they're going to specify. So my dream job is a job where I make people, the employees and the customers, happy, and makes a better product. What other companies are you interviewing with? You can lie all you want about this, but each lie is going to be exponentially more difficult, and all the lies in the world aren't going to matter once you have to act, once the rubber meets the road. I suggest telling the truth in full transparency, and if they don't like it, they can go fly a kite. That's my personal experience, or my personal opinion. Because if they're not going to be fully truthful and transparent with you, then why would you want to work for them? So if they don't want you to be fully truthful and transparent with them, then what's the point? They want you to be like a liar? They want... See, because here's the problem, and this is the whole video within itself. They want you to fully commit to them, and they're giving you nothing in return. It doesn't work that way. It does not work that way. It doesn't work that way when you're trying to find a new job from your old job, and they're like, oh, well, we'll pay you more money to stay. No, it doesn't work. It's too late. I already have a new offer. And it doesn't work that way from the new job either. So you only know what you know and what you can work with and what you can trust but verify. So the only thing I can suggest with which companies are you interviewing with, and I only answer if I've actually had interviews, not with what I've submitted applications for, but I won't give them the specific company names, but I will tell them that there are... They'll want to know specific company names, and I can see how that would be a little bit confusing, but I'll tell them... I think only ever once somebody actually pressed me for their company names, and it's because they were in the same... crap, I can't think of the right word. They were in the same genre of work. I can't think of the right... They were in the same work mode, the same work model. I can't think of the right word. I'm sorry. I'm starting to slip up now. They were both in the same line of work. Let's just say that. So, so they don't literally say what are the names of the other companies. They say what are their companies. It basically is just saying, are you submitting or have you actually? Here's what they're actually asking. How far are you in the hiring process with other companies? And the reason why they're asking this is they don't want to start going through the process with you only to find out that you're like a day away from getting an offer somewhere else. That's really all it is. So what I tell them is I'm going to be 100% truthful with you. I have interviews. I have an interview somewhere else, but it's only a first interview. And this is my first interview with you too. And I'm just letting you know right now, you're both equal in my mind. And I'm not going to do anything with one of you until I tell the other. And I've told you both that I'm not playing any games. So, and this is just to be fair because I don't know any other way of doing it. So, I'm not going to play you both against each other. There's going to be a bidding war. There's going to be any negotiations. It's just you're both equal and fair, and that's the only way to know how to do it because I'm an equal and fair person. So, if as long as the offers come within a few days of each other, then my wife and I are going to decide, or my boyfriend and I, or husband, or whatever, my dog or my cat and I, or whatever, are going to decide. And if the offers don't come within a couple days of each other, then I'm going with whichever one comes first. So I just want to let you know that. And just, I'm serious. That is exactly what I tell them, because I've heard so many horrible, gut-wrenching stories from really good agency people that have been screwed because people are idiots with this. So that's why they ask this question. It's nothing personal. They're not trying to scam any information out of you. They've just been screwed so many times. They're just being honest. They just want you to be transparent with them. And that's all. And then so you just say, so in return, if you could just be completely transparent and honest with me on how we're doing in the interview process, that'd be great. That's all I ask. They usually won't be. But if they really like you, if they're really interested in you, then they will be. And that's how you'll know. One of the common questions that I get, and that everybody gets, you get this in your job applications, you get this in interviews, is either why are you leaving your current job, or why were you fired, or were you fired from your prior job. You should check the laws in your state, but most states have what's called an at-will employment clause, which means unless you were actually terminated for breaking some kind of law, which they'll probably find out from your either background check or your credit score, the employer, when they call, if you check the little box and say you can call my prior employer or whatever, the only thing they're going to tell them is that they worked for there from this time to this time. That's the only thing they can legally tell them. Other than that, you were an at-will employee, depending on which state it was, and that's all you have to tell them. If you were fired, terminated, or decided to leave for any reason, you don't have to tell them why. Just say I'm at will, decided to leave. Like I can, or they were at will. They decided to terminate me under the at will. They didn't give me a reason. The reason was at will. And stick to your stick to your story on this, because they will try to pressure you into giving up more information than you have to. Then not only that you legally have to, but just that there's no, it's none of their business. A lot of times either they don't have records anymore, or they're just nosy. They don't really need to know. That's between you and your prior employer. That's all protected information, and it's all highly legally protected information, which is why the at will clause exists, because they can't tell you, otherwise you could sue them, and they can't tell the next person, otherwise you could claim discrimination and all this stuff. So check and see if your state has an at will clause, and definitely use that if anybody tries to ask why you're fired or why you're terminated, and use that as the reason, and look it up in your state. See if your state has that, or you might already know if you've looked over your agreements that you sign. Say such and such state is an at will employed state, and if they pressure you, you just, I was terminated under the at will, that was the reason for it, and they go, yeah, but why? And just keep sticking to that. It's really none of their business. So they really want to know, but they don't really need to know. Anything they actually need to know, they'll find out in your background check and your credit check. Under the part to where, were you convicted of any felonies or misdemeanors, and even those laws vary state to state as well. So these questions are really super important for you to do the research and know your laws and rights from state to state. So do your due diligence and definitely know what your laws are. Don't answer these questions until you know for sure, because you don't want to give anybody any information that you don't have to, that could end up hurting you, especially when it's none of their business and you haven't done anything wrong. It's where giving away too much information can definitely hurt you, that you, even when you've done absolutely nothing wrong. So yeah. So why are you looking for a new position, or what are you looking for in a new position rather? And same thing I would say as earlier, unless you're looking for something new. Maybe if you're moving in within a department in your own company still, this is where you need to really look into yourself and try to decide what you're looking for your next steps. This isn't something that I can tell you. Just for me, I always tell them I'm looking for the most complex project and software system, business system possible, where I can help the most people. That's what I tell them. And if not, that's okay, but preferably, you can only answer that for yourself. But definitely, it's definitely something to think about, because if they ask you, you don't want to go, I don't know. What type of work environment you prefer, what makes you uncomfortable. I'm ashamed to say that I actually got asked this question. This is one of the stupidest questions I've ever been asked in my life. I was like, are you kidding me? I looked at the interviewer and I'm like, this is the stupidest question that I've ever been asked in my life. I was like, are you... Sorry, my cord, I'm on my cord here. I said an environment where my coworkers aren't fighting and arguing with each other and yelling at each other. And she didn't like that. I don't know. I think what you're supposed to answer here is if you prefer a quiet environment over a loud environment. Um, and I think I caveated that with, I would really prefer to work in an environment where people are actually working instead of socializing and messing around all day and not working. And she wasn't going to hire me anyway. I've interviewed with her several times, and I don't know why she kept calling me in for interviews and never hiring me. It's strange. But, that's a story for a different video. Um, but yeah, if I guess here's the thing: if working in a warehouse makes you feel uncomfortable, but you're applying for a warehouse job, they're gonna look at you weird. If you don't like working in cubes, but you're applying for a cube job, they're gonna look at you weird. So don't be goofy, right? Think this through. What's your management style? What's the time you exercise leadership? Um, Whenever I'm asked this, since I'm not a manager, quote unquote, even though people tell me I should be, and I hear that the best managers are people that don't want to be managers, I substitute management for mentorship because I consider myself a mentor, and I manage by mentorship. I show people how I want things done, and then have them figure out the best way that they can accomplish, like the way I like things done, if that makes sense. Um, those of you that have managed, you're already maybe set in your ways, or maybe you're not, and you can answer this for yourself. So, it's something to think about. I don't get this one a lot, but then when I do, I go, okay, that's weird. Why would you care? You're the manager. Why would you ask me this question? So I don't know. Then it's usually like a secret code for, wait, there's going to be management in this role? You're not paying me to be a manager. Do you mean project manager? Or do you mean mentorship? So something to think about. What's the time you disagreed with a decision that was made? I get this one a lot, and I go, what's the time you disagreed with a decision? It's like every meeting. Usually disagreements are just miscommunications. So disagreements are just miscommunications. They happen often. That's why communication is important. That's why communication is important. Yeah. Each one of these could be like a full video. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this. Just focus on communication. That's all I can really say about this. How would your boss and coworkers describe you? This is going to change based on if you're an introvert or an extrovert. Introvert versus extrovert. It's important because maintain positive visibility no matter what. And I don't know how this question is a big deal. I don't know why it comes up. It kind of segues into and dovetails out of some of the earlier questions. It's still something to think about. Sometimes they throw it in as just a curveball. But it's to get you to reflect on your persona and your image as other people see it. So, image isn't important to some people, but to other people that dress up in a suit and tie every day, even though they don't have to, and spend 30 minutes on their hair and shine their shoes and stuff, even when they sit in front of a desk all day. There's nothing wrong with that, but they do like a bad job, and their metrics and flowcharts and presentations and their documentation looks like garbage. You see what I mean? And it's like, if you spent that much time on your actual work, your work You see where the problem is there? Describe you. I wouldn't focus on how they would describe me. I would focus on how they would describe my work. And that is the work aspect. So something to think about. Why you changed career paths? This kind of has to do with kind of an earlier question. A couple of earlier questions. Like I said, these are in no particular order. A lot of people change career paths. So this isn't a deal breaker. This isn't a game changer. This isn't a bad thing. Usually they're just interested. They're interested in seeing if there's a story there or some kind of interesting, inspirational hoodly-hoo. Yeah, no real big mystery there. They might even ask you, like, why is your degree different from what you doing as a career versus what your degree is in. Assuming you have, a degree. There's nothing wrong if you don't have a degree. I'm just, there you go. So just something to think about. If you have majorly changed career paths, explain it. Or if you believe that it's not a career path, still something to think about. What's your first 30, 60, 90 days look like? I know for me, for what I do, this is specifically important because I actually have my 30, 60, 90 days planned out. There are very specific things that I do for my 30, 60, 90 days. And it's funny because I had this job interview a couple weeks ago where I had like 95% of the stuff they wanted, but the other 5%, they're like, oh, it's too much ramp-up time. Well, if they had hired me like a week ago, I would already be done with that. And I'd be ready to hit the road running because I have my 30, 60, 90 days planned out. And it was only like a 90-day contract. And I just noticed yesterday that the job posting's still up there. It's going to be like another couple weeks if they even find anybody. And now the stupid cow from the agency won't even talk to me. And I just have to laugh. I'm like, you guys have no clue. And so and the people from the company don't have a clue either. And so my respect for the agency and the client both went way down. And because I have my 30, 60, 90 locked down. And so should you. Especially if you're going to be like a project manager or developer, you should always know what your 30 and 60, 90 look like. So I can tell you what mine is, but you should know what yours are. That'd be a whole nother video, but I can only tell you what mine would be. So, what are your salary requirements? You can go look these up if you don't know. But if you spend any time on Dice or Indeed or Monster, you kind of get a good idea, and then you extrapolate your hourly by what, 2,200 or something like that to figure out your yearly. I forget exactly. It changes a lot, and it changes on the private sector versus public sector. Definitely figure this out, because if you say the wrong thing, you'll get weird looks, and it shows you don't know what you're talking about. And if you lowball yourself, they get really confused. I lowballed myself, and the lady freaked out. But it was funny because I don't know, that's such a freaking stupid conversation. She's like, don't you ever sell yourself short. But now she won't talk to me. And I'm like, I didn't sell myself short for me. I was trying to come up with a number that the project manager could start to be flexible with, because you wouldn't tell me what the project manager's budget was. And I was trying to start with I was trying to start with the project manager's numbers in mind instead of mine, which I guess I'll never do again. But if you start with too high of a number, they'll basically hang the phone up on you instead of even trying to tell you what the actual rate's at. Oh, so stupid. But anyway, figure this out. There's a couple of really good websites you can find online. Or just, like I said, Dice, Indeed, Monster. What do you like to do outside of work? This one's really important. Don't say, you like to chop up pig heads with giant knives. Don't say you like to write adult novels. It's okay that you like to do these things. There's nothing wrong with, the fact that you like to, go fishing or hunting, or do knife reviews, or do gun reviews. The problem is there's so much political correctness going on right now, and having a job is more important than trying to fight that battle. I just say, so instead of saying like camping, which camping they'd be like, whoa, camping, whoa. I say I like to garden, and that way I feel like I'm still being true to myself. I say, I like to garden. I like the outdoors. That's what I tell them. And to me, I feel like I'm still being true to myself. So, if you like cars, you go, I like cars, so on and so forth. Try to keep it neutral and simple. Okay, don't get super complicated. I've made that mistake too many times. And they'll say that they're interested, and they'll say that they want to hear more, but the stuff that they're writing down is not good, and you will not get the job. I don't know why that is. I don't know why their thinking is so sick. But if you don't fit into this really narrow, like sports fan BS. Oh, I like sports. Oh, great, you'll fit in here. What? You have to like sports, otherwise. It's so stupid. It just breaks my heart how stupid that is. If you're an animal, which one would you be? I hear this one a lot. I'd be a turtle. I don't know why. I don't know why this animal comes up a lot. But I think everybody should know what animal they would be. Yeah. I don't know if there's some websites out there. Don't give out your Facebook information. There's a lot of them. You need to give up your Facebook information. You don't need to do that. You don't need to give out any personally identifiable information. But definitely figure out what animal you would be. There's a lot of these places that ask that, and as you get further along into the interview process, they might start having more personality exam kind of test things. But this is more to kind of get to see who you are and if you would gel. Because if you're like, well, I'm a frigging pterodactyl or something, and they're like, great, I'm a Tyrannosaurus Rex. I'm a dragon. They're like, great, that's great. So, I mean, there's nothing wrong with wanting to be a dragon, but they're like, why? Because you're like a wise, old, narcissistic, evil, plotting asshole, right? And they're like, oh, I mean, even me with like a turtle, they're like, oh, so you're turtle, so you're really slow. And I'm like, well, I'm slow, but I mean, at least I get there, and I get there in one piece, and I can still bite people, and I can protect the people around me, So I don't know. I think it's important. Yeah. So this is a loaded question. This is a do not answer under any circumstances. I don't know why this still pops up in interviews. Don't answer this. Don't ever no. No. They're not allowed to answer. They're not allowed to ask this. If they ever ask this, it means their questions weren't vetted by HR. HR would have a fit. HR would blow a gasket. The best thing is to just say, "Oh, hey, I was wondering if we could talk more about the job stuff, more about the job questions. You know, if we could talk more about the project or something. You know, try to direct back to the job." Don't ever answer these. Oh my goodness. Guns, freedom of speech, torture. What's the other one? Abortion. There's like a list, and the list is only getting worse, or bigger, I should say. Abortion. Pepe the Frog. Yeah. Oh, feminism? Feminism? Yeah. Just don't. Just don't. Feminism? Feminism? Yeah. Just, no. No. There's nothing wrong with talking about these things in like a safe space among friends that aren't gonna lose their stuff. But treat like the person that you're interviewing with as if you actually already had the job. You wouldn't talk about this stuff at work, hopefully, because you know you got to pay your family, you got to pay your bills, you got to your kids and cats and dogs and horses and stuff. Oh, China, right? So just don't don't do it. Don't freak out on them, but try to just gently bring the discussion back. They're not allowed to ask these questions. They're not. There are hard and fast laws, literally laws. You can't ask these questions. You're not even supposed to be talking about this stuff. So, yeah. This question, what do you think we could do better, differently? Big companies and little companies ask this, so it's important to, and middle-sized companies, they want to know, really, if you're going to come in like a wrecking ball when you first come in there. People doing that to startups love that. Middle-sized companies might be okay. They might be a little tolerant. Might not be okay with it, but they might be tolerant. Bigger companies will kick you out, or they'll put you through some brainwashing sessions, and if it doesn't work, they'll kick you out. So it's important to know your audience. They might be doing everything a certain way for a reason. If they're a middle to larger sized company. If they're a smaller company, they might have absolutely no clue. So it's important to know your audience. And know their, so let's see, know your audience and know their business maturity level. Because, oh my goodness, you could like save the company or be thrown back out on the street for suggesting even basic stuff. Or you might be right on the money and they're already doing it anyway. It's just a matter of how you word things. So I usually go, "Oh, do you guys have something kind of like a morning huddle already where you get together and talk about stuff?" And they go, "Oh yeah, we just call it this and we do it at this time." And I go, "Oh yeah, okay, cool." And then I go, and then I write that down. And they go, why is that good or is that bad? Would you change it? And I go, no, I think that's great. I just I just wanted to know, because I think that's great and that's perfect, and I just thank you. That's perfect. That's exactly what I'd expect. And so that's kind of how I approach it. And if they say no, I go, oh, okay, that's cool. What do you think about that? And they go, oh, well, we used to have it, but it wasn't working very well, or so on. That's a whole other discussion. So let's get to wrapping this up. Brain teasers. Most interviews don't have time for this freaking garbage. But if you're slated for like a 4-hour interview, there's gonna be stupid ass brain teasers like, why are manhole covers circular, and how many monkeys does it take to cross a bridge or a river to make sure that the wolves don't eat the sheep at the same time. So study a couple of the more common brain teasers if you haven't played any of the Professor Layton games, which I highly recommend. The Professor Layton games are for the DS, 3DS. Have all of them, pretty much, that there are. And they're really good. But you can study them online too for free. But if ain't nobody got time for that, just go over your critical thinking and problem solving, so you don't get shanghaied with any of that and look like a moron. And the famous stupid question of all, do you have any questions for us? I hate this question. I think it's stupid. No, I don't have any questions for you. That's dumb. I usually do, though. 99% of the time, I actually do have a question. My questions are usually project related, unless I am hyper confused about what their company even does in the first place. Like, if I can't figure out from their company mission what their company actually does, but I understand the project, but I don't understand the company, then I'll ask what the company does. If I understand what the company does, but I don't understand what the project is, I'll ask that. And they're more than happy to tell me. So that's the route I go. Or I have asked in the past, is there anything that is there anything else about the position that we haven't talked about? I've asked that before. I don't know if you're supposed to ask that or not, but for some reason, this I don't know why this has never come up before in anything I've read, but I've asked that plenty of times, and they start rambling more stuff about the job. And I go, okay, that's weird. No. And I go, well, okay, can I respond to some of that then? And then I started telling them more about how my resume and how my experience actually fits with that. So I have said no, I don't have any questions. I think that just about covers it. I've said that before. Either when I know that the interview is just toast because the interviewer was so horrible, or if I've asked questions throughout the whole thing, and I've said that before in the old. Do you have any more questions? I go, well, I've been asking questions throughout the whole thing. So I go, do you think that's good for questions? And they go, yeah, I think that's good. And I go, okay, cool. And I don't know if that counts or not, but if I look at the clock and see that we're at time, I'm not going to go through that formality and run them up against the clock. And you see what I mean? So that's Otherwise, those are the two questions that I ask. I ask about the project. I ask about the project if I found out enough about the company, or ask about the company if I found out enough about the project. And so I got some of these from the Muse, and there's the website. The rest from Monster and Glassdoor. But honestly, these questions aren't like radical proprietary. Like the Muse tries to act like, oh, sign up for our thing or whatever. It's like, dude, you guys, I'm sorry, but you're not that special. These questions aren't that special. I could have made the list myself. In fact, I was a little disappointed. But it was a little bit of a reminder, I guess, and they helped me put it together. So, but they're all the same questions, and then some more that I threw in there, honestly, because they didn't have some of them. I was surprised, and I don't know if that's because they don't update it or because they don't always know what they're talking about. Oh no. So I wanted to put some LinkedIn stuff in there, but I didn't see LinkedIn up on the first couple on YouTube. And Glassdoor actually had... Glassdoor wasn't in the top couple, but Glassdoor, to be honest, had the best list, in my opinion. So, anyway, I want to say thanks again for 400 subs. And thanks again if you stuck through all this. And thanks to me for enduring all these interviews. And I still don't have a job yet. And I'm not in a good position right now. And I'm going to keep doing videos as long as I can. And, but just thanks for everybody. Over the years, it's been a good run. And I hope I'm around. I hope I'm around long enough with like an internet connection and everything to see 500 subs and stuff. So we'll see though. And if you like this, if you want any personal one-on-one, check out my Patreon, please. Patreon.com/GentsPaladin. I'll leave a description down below, and that would help me out because I don't make anything off YouTube, so that'd mean a lot to me. So thanks again. I hope this helps somebody. I hope this helps you guys get jobs. And this was a very fun project. So if you have any questions, if there are any quick questions, just leave them down below in the comments, and I'll help every single one of you. And if you want any personal one-on-one for an hour, or 2 hours even, check out patreon.com/GentsPaladin. Thanks, and tell your friends and like, subscribe, and talk to y'all later. Bye.